pause for effect. Hey everyone, welcome back to the challenge wrap up for challenge season 41, episode 15. As you could tell, despite the incredible pause, I am not Brian Cohen. I am Ali Lasher, and here with me during Brian's paternity leave is the great Mike Bloom.
Ali, we get to celebrate birthdays in so many ways here. Of course, it was Jake's birthday in the house, and it's a literal birthday, which is the entire reason why I'm here.
Yes, so a huge mazel tov to the Moses Cohen family on the birth of Cohen Grant _ Can we get that Twitter handle?
Yeah, I was really hoping.
Not Grant, Dylan. Oh my God,
Dylan Grant. Dylan Grant. His name is Dylan. Okay, he's a really good baby. Yeah, I was really hoping, as a fan of the two of you and everything you do for the past 10 plus years, that he would go with Barfeld Hunter would be the name.
We were hoping.
Because real ones might remember that, of course, first off, for those of you who may not know, Hunter was a contestant on the challenge as of 10 seasons ago, and he had a baby off of the show, and the baby was named Cohen Brian. And so I remember there was a big to-do around that, considering Brian's current social media handle. So I was waiting for this bit to finally come back around. But alas, I think much like the show proper, Hunter has been promptly left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, instead of a name for the bit, they went with a great name. So we're upset about that here in the challenge wrap up, but we're happy for them. And I'm happy because we don't get to do a lot of Brian and I have really been on our shit over here, and we haven't done a lot of sub guest co-hosts in a while. So I am selfishly thrilled to get to talk to you, Mike, about the challenge.
Likewise. Yeah, I am very excited to talk about the challenge. This is a show that I admittedly, it's tough to say that I'm more casual about compared to the other shows that I usually cover, because that isn't honestly saying much, considering how much I do have my hands deep in a lot of the other stuff going on. But of course, I'm a big fan of the show, have been watching for years and years and years, as well as checking out all the great coverage that you do. And yeah, I have a lot of I can't even say mixed emotions, because they are largely positive. But I think the more I've been thinking about it, and the fact that we are really approaching the end game here, right? I imagine we're going to have 2 more eliminations after this before the final. I think I'm starting to coalesce around a lot of my overall thoughts about this season, and especially what direction does the show want to take following this. Is this supposed to be a bellwether for where the show wants to go now in the 40s? Or is this going to be another hey, we're throwing in a bunch of newbies and we'll bring back 2 of them for the next season?
Yeah, I'm excited. Not only is it a good time to talk about your feelings on the show overall and the direction as we go to the 40s, but we've been very loosely tracking, not really tracking, but loosely tracking sort of the demise of MTV going on. And over the past week, Ridiculousness got canceled. So I was like, oh, thank God somebody who actually knows television is coming to talk about this, because I can't believe there wasn't a reality flash about Ridiculousness.
Well, spoiler alert, Ali. I'm going to call you out here. There was a reality flash about Ridiculousness.
There was?
Yeah,
Did I miss it?
It came out this past Friday.
Oh, well, it was Shabbat. Sorry.
There we go. Exactly.
Okay, great.
Blame your Judaism as an excuse for not checking out the reality.
We don't need to talk about that.
We can. I want to get your thoughts on it specifically. So yeah, for the uninitiated, Ridiculousness.
That's amazing.
Which is a show produced by Rob Dyrdek that has essentially become MTV. Essentially, has taken up 80% of its waking and sleeping hours. Has officially been canceled. It will still be producing new episodes into 2026, but no new episodes will be produced after this current batch. And, it was part of this big press release, or I would say, I guess what, it was released by TMZ and Variety. And a source had told them that they're working to quote unquote reimagine MTV with a more curated slate featuring fresh formats, different creative voices, and refreshed programming. And one of the reasons why I did the reality flash about it was not necessarily to memorialize one of the most enigmatic touchstones of MTV in general, but to try to extrapolate out of, okay, what does this mean for a show like The Challenge? You and Brian talked about this last week, right? The Johnny Bananas declaration, be it facetious or not, of, okay, it might be moving off of MTV it seemed like from the cursory research you were doing, you were less likely to believe it. But do you feel like it's moving the needle for you one way or the other with this news?
Well, now like in the week that has passed, I feel like now maybe I misunderstood Johnny or Johnny misunderstood or whatever. Like now tell me if this is incorrect that like the challenge will still be on MTV as a part of that refresh and
Mm.
not necessarily moving to Paramount yet, or is your understanding it is moving to Paramount for 42?
Yeah, because I feel like Johnny Bananas was really trying to do the whole sky is falling of like, okay, well, it's moving there next season, and then we better hope it does well there, or else it's gone for good. You know, almost sort of like, I'm demoting you, and then you get one more chance. But yeah, there's a lot of mixed messages around this, but what they're doing with MTV in general, you know, there's some reports that are saying, okay, they're bringing back more music-based programs. There's some are saying, no, they're canceling all these international music stations. So the, you know, lame answer is that I have no freaking clue. I would be surprised if they really did decide to just clean house and be like, okay, yep, it's not going to be on MTV anymore, especially considering how much they have juggled the challenge and all these shows between MTV and Paramount Plus. The only reason I could possibly think of it was if there was any sort of like wide sweep initiative of like, no, all original programming on MTV is going away. And I think, you know, the Catfish, I believe, has also announced that it is done as well. So maybe the challenge will be the lone holdover, but the only way I could imagine it moving off of MTV proper would be if they're just saying outright, okay, as part of this new refresh, we are doing away with it all. You know, they're going like full Challenge USA season 1 of like, hey, we're starting new with a whole crop of characters that you're going to get to love. And if you want old familiars, go to streaming, go check it out.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would say like, you know, I'm glad I don't podcast about, I don't know, like a teen mom compared to the challenge in terms of like even in a refresh, I do feel like the challenge has kept itself I don't know, current, modern enough that it could fit into like whatever sort of unless they're just doing completely music programming or like something
Yeah.
where this wouldn't touch. Like the challenge has shown that it fits into the catalog of CBS, of Paramount Plus, of MTV. So I do think it's like a versatile show that would make sense that it would survive if anything's going to survive from the MTV world. But I don't know, bummer. That would be a real bummer if in like 2 seasons the challenge is gone, when really I think there was a time we were covering the challenge where if you told me the challenge was canceled, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Yeah.
I do feel like the challenge has been a show that had a dip and now is like picking up, not necessarily with respect to viewers, but in respect to quality and bringing in new faces from these shows we're talking about, like Survivor, Big Brother, the international shows. Like they've, I think, worked hard to sort of modernize to reach a more current, broader audience.
Yeah.
So hopefully, like I would be really shocked if like 2 seasons from now, a season from now, off of what is the best season I think we've covered in such a long time, that the show gets canceled. But
Yeah, I would
them's be the
agree with that.
breaks.
Yeah, because it is really interesting, again, to do a bit of navel gazing and look back at the fact that, yeah, maybe the best
Oh,
decision that was made in the 30s was starting to open the floodgates. Because, again, I think some of the fun of the challenge in general upon its initial conceit, right, was like, here are some of your favorites or most talked about people from the real world, some of the most talked about people from Road Rules. What would happen if they collided, right? It is that all-star reality TV format that I think did go stale for a while when they were just kind of picking from not only a select number of feeder shows, but just recycling those people over and over again. And yeah, while the memes make themselves of like, oh God, don't tell me I have to watch Married at First Sight Romania season 15 to understand the context as to why this person's on. I do think it invites in some fresh faces of people who are reality TV stars in their own right, so they hopefully know how to make good television, but also invites some fans in as well. I know a good amount of people that were like, hey, I started watching the challenge because I saw that Michelle Fitzgerald was on. I saw that Michaela was on. And so again, while that might not translate to raw numbers, I think it has translated to a lot of renewed interest. And I think a lot of reinvigoration of what the format was to begin with, which has obviously now blown up as a concept, specifically with the traders becoming so mainstream, which is like, hey, there's so much reality TV out there. What if we pick people from a bunch of different corners and see how they interact with each other?
Right. I love money walked so that the challenge and traders could run. But yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So with that, now that we've set the general landscape, let's get into the season because I've got to hear, Mike Bloom's thoughts
Oh, should I
about the
do my own
season.
hashtag? Should I pull a Tina Barta here?
Mike Bloom thoughts, please. MBTs, I love them.
So yeah, MBTs I feel like are a controversial political item nowadays. Yeah. So or maybe think of EBTs. Yeah. So this season, I am.
Now I'm googling. Now I'm scared.
Is it EBTs? I feel like cut this out if being incorrect. Yeah. So this season overall, I've really enjoyed. I mean, in general, I feel like this concept of they called it Fresh Meat originally, but they've of course replicated it in something like War of the Worlds, a couple of other times of like, okay, a venerated member of the challenge team combined with a brand new fresh face to the franchise is usually a winning formula, especially again in aspects like War of the Worlds and this, where you're bringing in people who are reality stars, who are comfortable in front of the camera to a certain aspect. And so I know that this is a Burger King sponsored program, but ba 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 ba, I'm loving it, baby. I completely agree with you that I think on the whole, this is the strongest season we have had probably since like that first War of the Worlds, and it might outkick it depending on how it's coming to a conclusion. I think that the dynamics are very straightforward at this moment, which I think makes it easier to edit, but makes it maybe harder to talk about from like oh, this is so interesting, what's going on, because it's going to be, as was talked about here, like, all right, if X side wins, then X side goes in, et cetera, et cetera. But it is allowing us to really get to know what I think, especially from a newbie perspective, is such a fantastic cast. I think that, as I mentioned before, the challenge hasn't had a great tradition as of late with bringing in a lot of people with potential and being like, great, I'm going to keep 3 of you and bring you back sparingly over the next 3 seasons. Again, we'll maybe talk about this at the end. The way that the show has edited some of their big fan favorite darlings this season does make me feel like, okay, are they clowning on them just to clown on them? Are they clowning on them to be like, move over, oldies, the new generation's taking over? I mean, Nani says in this episode, right, to Jenna, like, these people are training for the Olympics. Like, this might be one of the first generations of the challenge where they are operating under the America's Fifth Sport banner of like, okay, we were not brought in because we happen to be MTV stars that are somewhat athletic and make for good drama. Like, we are competitors first and foremost that also happen to have been on television in the past. What I will say, having said all that, is that going back to War of the Worlds, the structure was right that they started in pairs and then they went down to individuals. And if you think about it, this season is exactly the opposite, right? Yes, they were operating in these pairs to start, but it was very fluid. There were individual eliminations. Now there are paired eliminations, and there are benefits and drawbacks to that. I think the benefit is that we got to know a lot of these new threats early on, either the ones that were being thrown into elimination or, the fact that you had people like Leo and Gabe have the initiative to make a stand, to make their voices be heard, because they were not sort of determining their actions by the person that they were going to be permanently partnered with, right? And that created some fun drama as well of like, oh no, now Nani and Gabe are or Olivia and Gabe are working together after she called him out or he called her out and all that type of stuff. And again, I really like the back and forth that's been going on the latter part of this season. This feels very indicative of a dynamic we don't often see on the challenge. It has come at the cost, though, and it's rather surprising to me, of the fact that we've gotten to know a lot of these new threats and their own individual initiatives. And not to say it's gone out the window, but like, correct me if I'm wrong here, I feel like a lot of the strategic dynamics in this locked in, paired part of the season has been entirely vet driven. These sides were determined essentially because it's like Olivia, Theo, and Anissa are all together, and then everyone else glommed onto each other. The rare exception we got was the whole Leo Jake that ended up being an entire dead end because now both of them are eliminated. Of like, there might be a rookie uprising. It really does seem like, you mentioned this last week, that these rookies are kind of falling in line behind what the veterans want to do and the decisions that the veterans are making of like, well, I could try to vote on this other side, but no, because Nani and Michaela and, Ashley and etc. were all working together, I have to sort of fall in line behind them. I mean, like, do we even know, like, did Jake and Adrian want to work with each other? We have no idea because that doesn't necessarily come out in the edit. And so, again, I think that might be a downside of them choosing to go into this locked-in dynamic. I do like the idea that assuming there's not any sort of big switch up in the final of, okay, now it's individual again, we are going to get a person winning on their first season, which I'm always incredibly excited by. But I think it does come at the cost a bit of, yes, this was vets and new threats, and it feels like the first half of the season was about the new threats. Now it feels like it's more about the vets. And that was a little, I don't know, it took me a second to adjust to that, considering that I think I was operating under the assumption after watching the first half of the season of, okay, this narrative is going to be all about these are the new faces.
Yeah, it's a really great point. I think, you made a lot of great points. I think there is a surprisingly like a less there's less infighting in the group than I would expect. Like,
Yeah.
you would have thought there'd be more sort of Danny Tori situations where people who are now working together are at odds because their interests are not aligned. I think here, like, it was really hard when like Jake's making that case to Leo to sort of stand up to Ashley. It's like, well, you're not really offering him. I think that's also a detriment. There's nothing really the Closet Alliance can offer the folks who are in the bigger alliance, and especially the people who'd be more likely to flip in like the Leo and Ashley's. Well, they're in probably, again, if they didn't lose on their own, they were in a good like go home in the elimination. They were in a good spot because they're not a threatening team when the main alliance ends up eating each other. Like Michaela and Cedric have that conversation this episode. Like, we're kind of good. We're in the middle of the big alliance, and it probably won't be us when people start to Spider-Man meme turn on each other. So that is definitely a downside. I think there could have been more in the like, well, if you don't vote with me, maybe I'll stake a claim and put us up, like, and risk it. Like, there have been more, there were mechanisms in the game that could have facilitated like threatening your own partner and like, whatever. But we didn't really see that. And I think to your point, like, even though they were playing an individual game in the first half of the season, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks is not enough to then put your game on the line for somebody you met 5 weeks ago. Whereas some of these 20-year friendships are in place, kind of hard to stand up to that.
Yeah. And so I think that, again, I as you said, I think some of these new threats are sort of just putting their head down and being like, listen, I've got a good partnership going. We just need to sort of like get through these next few votes and then we'll make to the final. And so that comes at the cost maybe of really pushing back against your partner. Not to mention as well, I mean, they have a key example of Gabe and Janae of like, okay, we truly see if we're butting heads at this moment, that can lead to absolute disaster. So yeah, I have been both surprised and not surprised at the lack of staking claim. I mean, I think the biggest surprise of this episode, to be quite honest, is the fact that Jake and Anissa did not stake a claim for some reason. Like, is it the convention we see sometimes on the challenge where like someone volunteers to go into elimination when they were already going anyway to be like, I have my honor, I'm dying on my feet rather than living on my knees? Because the entire concept of staking a claim is the Hail Mary, right? It's the shot in the dark when it comes to Survivor. And we saw an example a few weeks ago of like the classic New Era conceit in Survivor of we're going to blindside somebody so they don't use their shot in the dark, which we saw with the whole, okay, we're going to, convince Theo and Adrian it isn't them so they don't stake a claim. Here, it has been talked about up and down the entire past 24-hour period. When Nany tells Anissa, I can't vote to keep you, she should be like ready to stake a claim right there. She should have turned to the camera directly, stopped the conversation at the bar, and said, "Can we go to the jury right now? Can we just skip to the deliberation?" It was an odd thing to me. Maybe it was like, we don't want to ruffle any feathers with anybody. This is where the long running narratives come in of like, we don't want to, piss anybody off on our way out going into another season. But I don't know, the entire creation of this concept, right, was like, when you feel you're backed into a corner, here's the one way you can get out of it besides winning an elimination. And the fact they didn't take that is kind of astounding to me.
Even if they won, like if they were like, how much longer can Theo and Adrian's luck last? Like, I like Jake and Anissa's chances against Theo and Adrian. I mean, it's not 100%, but I thought they had a good shot going in. So maybe they're like, we'll take our shot beating them. What is their plan coming back in the house? So like, even if you're not really afraid of the elimination, you've got no path forward. You're not going to win out. You're going to be getting the votes. Olivia has a partner in Will who's better connected in the house than even you are, Anissa. Like, why Jake didn't stake a claim on Cedric, to be honest, is like my shocker. That should have been like the Anissa sanctioned, fully agreed plan to move forward.
Yeah, because again, the big thing that happened with Gabe and Janae was like, okay, they weren't in danger, and then they put themselves in danger because Gabe lost the challenge and they automatically went in. But they were going in
100%.
anyway. Okay, the best outcome is you don't go in. The worst outcome is you do go in when you were already going in. Again, I'm sure it'll be explained on the official podcast this week or in other, venues on social media. But I don't know, maybe Jake was too hungover from the birthday celebrations to really give it any sort of peace of mind.
To Jake and Anissa's credit, I mean, they did seem like a strong team from a morale perspective. Yeah. We only ever heard from Jake that he was happy to be with Anissa. Anissa thought she had the best partner for herself in Jake. Jake says this episode, I wanted to prove Ashley wrong. I wanted to get Anissa to her first win. Maybe it just was such a successful pairing that they were like, we win together, we lose together, ride or dies. Insane from like a game perspective, but I guess like I respect that level of commitment to your very new teammate.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, very committed to someone that, again, you just met like 3 weeks ago. But again, that's the other thing about staking a claim too, is that it's also a fun way to crack the other side. You talked about the fact that there's very little to offer, even the ones that feel like they're on the bottom of the other alliance. But like, if you try to take another shot at Justin and Nany, and now it's Jake and Nany, and it's Justin and Anissa, like, okay, is Turbo going to vote in Nany and Jake now? Given the fact that, like, yes, it'd be getting rid of someone, quote unquote, on the other side, but at the cost of one of the most well-connected people in the house? I'm not entirely sure. So, and look, not to say too much about the next time on, because I know people are sometimes promo-phobic here, but like, I would imagine if I'm like Theo and Adrian, like, you gotta do this next week, right? Especially considering like their progress in daily so far has been terrible. Like, as long as they don't come in last again, like, they should be spelling that out in permanent ink. And I think it's a fun way to not only be able to potentially save yourself, but also cause a rift in the other side to make them actually do that infighting that you said has been missing up to this point, and be like, okay, now you have to pick and choose, right? Does the benefit of me going home outweigh the cost of losing this person in your alliance?
Yeah. And the only other thing about the infighting that kind of gets teed up in this episode is what's going to happen as between Sydney and Turbo, when it looks like Sydney is sort of aligned with Jeremy and Cedric, and Nany and Justin would be sort of like next on her list to go from within their bigger alliance. Obviously, Turbo has this relationship with Nany, but he did make a deal with Cedric and Jeremy, so we'll see where that goes. And then also, it seems like a lot of people are getting unhappy with Aviv. And so, like, not only would we expect there to be infighting between the pairs in terms of voting, but now we're going to maybe start to see some people like be casualties of their relationship with their partner. Like, Jeremy, we'd love to keep you, but we want to get rid of Aviv, so you have to go in, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the one I'm most intrigued by is the Sydney and Turbo of it all. I think we really just are setting up in bold typeface this decision that Turbo is going to have to make between his old partner and his new partner. And I think he would choose the latter, but he would do it in sort of like the P words way out, in a manner of speaking. And that, like, we saw a clip earlier this season, right? Or maybe it was like the last couple episodes where Nany was like, listen, if you have to vote in Turbo, just don't let me know, right? Like, she wasn't actively pushing against the idea. I feel like Turbo would do the exact same thing of like, listen, if it's going to be the Nany, I can't do it. And so, like, there could be a chance that the masters of the burn vote in Sydney and Turbo could utilize it again. And from Sydney's perspective, like, that's not a capital W win, but like, if she's able to essentially nullify a vote to keep Nany, that would be a lowercase w win for sure.
Yeah, I think the issue for that plan is going to be that Michaela seems to hate Aviv. So, like, Michaela, while Cedric might be on board with, like, looking at Nany, I think Michaela and Cedric are on board with looking at Aviv, which to your point earlier about the edit, and we got this a lot with like Leroy, where Leroy's constantly talking about how washed and tired he is and how everybody else is amazing. We get a clip this week of Michaela, again, choice words for Aviv, and Michaela says, after the season, some people are going to be retired or rehired, and she should be retired. So, like, the conversation is happening on the show about, like, who are we putting out to pasture from these veterans? I mean, it's vet on vet crime with Michaela, but she's obviously a newer era vet.
But it's also kind of fun because it's kind of like crabs in the bucket of like, this is Michaela's third season. This is Aviv's third season. So it's like, okay, I got to punch. And the only person I can punch is the one who's done just as many seasons as me.
That's a great point, because obviously Aviv is from a longer time ago, but was a one and done. Was she one and done at the time?
Yeah,
literally. She didn't come back after fresh meat. Yeah. Oh, there you go. All right, so we get down to even discuss the episode, which we've done a great job of doing, I think, personally.
We can go on right now. 26 minutes is good.
Turbo's coming back in the house. A lot of complicated feelings around Turbo this season, because Turbo, from an edit perspective, probably having one of his best seasons. And the bar is kind of low in terms of how Turbo has been socially. But, remember he's wearing costumes to the bar. They're having a good time. Everyone's yucking it up with Turbo. Sydney gets a confessional saying what an incredible partner Turbo is. Offline, we're hearing Turbo, not such a great, incredible partner. What do you make of the evolution of the Pea Chicken, Turbo?
Yeah. Again, it's really tough, to your point, to extricate what we know of the actual truth, or not even the truth in terms of at least the way he was perceived by the people in the house versus the edit that he has been given. And I think part of it is because, again, we don't have a Johnny Bananas anymore. We don't have a CT anymore. We don't have a Leroy anymore. He is kind of holding it down for the male vets right now. And we know how much the show loves to edit towards its male vets in general. But I can't help but think, some really sad, disappointing things when you cut to Turbo having his arms around Cindy, right? Considering all the stuff that she has said about how both physically, mentally, and emotionally possessive he was of her in the house. Now, maybe because he's sick right now, she caught him in a good time where he has such low energy that he is not going to continue to lord over her. Even something as small as it's Jake's birthday and Turbo's asleep in a booth. I thought that was going to lead to, oh no, it's going to be a big fight that, this is a classic Big Brother thing, right? The petty grievances of, oh, so-and-so missed my birthday party. But no, it's just sort of a random comic aside. I mean, I think he's edited like kind of a comic character, which, again, I'm saddened by, considering that this guy did and has done some problematic things and has made especially the women in the house feel this way. And the fact of the matter is, to undress his entire philosophy in the game about you have no honor, you have no respect. It's incredibly male coded of oh no, you have to adhere to my idea of respect, and if you go about it a different way. And then the entire hypocritical thing of do not call me a P word, yet I incorporate P word into my most classic catchphrase. It's all bad. It's all bad, but then you have to acknowledge the fact that yes, the challenge has come far in the past 25 years, but it is still the challenge at the end of the day. And I do feel some of the stuff wrapped up in its D and A, in a manner of speaking, is taking people who have done some behaviors that people have not taken kindly to and just being look at this goofy bro. Isn't he having a great time? We need him for seasons to come.
Yeah. And I think it's hard, because I was going to say usually in the past, I think it was more of a mixed bag of whether some of the stuff would be shown or not. They've certainly covered up things in the past for people, and they've aired things for people to work through and deal with, or not, whatever. I think now we trend much more in the direction of we hear about it on podcasts afterwards, and we don't see the problematic stuff that happens on the show as much, almost more as a rule. Hard to say, because I remember with the whole Leroy and Camilla stuff, there was a lot of conversation around whether Leroy wanted that to air or not. Right. Maybe they were doing it out of respect for Leroy. I think Leroy has said, I wish it made it, there's a lot of complication around it. So I would say, with the asterisk of the person who is being harmed If the person who's being harmed wants it to air, or doesn't not want it to air, I wish these things were making air.
Yeah.
Because at its best, The Real World, The Challenge was at least talking about these kinds of things. And I think that would be important, right? Like, obviously, we don't need to look to reality television as a moral compass or a moral discussion ground. But, like, honestly, it could be like there could be a conversation around this. There could be, at least we'd know, okay, Turbo shouldn't be coming back definitively. Again, if Sydney wanted this to be shown, I really wish we were dealing with this on the show.
Yeah.
Because it's just so hard to like really hold someone accountable. Or, people were mad at us last week. Don't drag Turbo. You don't know what he did or didn't do. I believe Sydney. Like, I believe what she's saying.
And that's the thing, too. I think Brian brought up a really great point last week in that, like, yes, there's a good chance that, like, while some people may have had a problem with him, it was in very specific circumstances, and in general, things were in bounds. But it doesn't help anyone in either case here by not showing it, right? Again, not to do a little bit of apples and oranges here, but it's a bit like discussion about getting rid of the Big Brother live feeds or the rewind feature where people feel like, okay, it's done so that people won't go back in time and screenshot and record footage of the bad things that people said. But the downside of that is then you kind of open up a world for people to run with these wild narratives of like, oh my God, this thing happened, that oftentimes makes things worse. It does not allow people the opportunity to provide context here. And so, yeah, people are running wild sometimes too of like, okay, look at all this stuff that Turbo was doing. Look at all this hearsay. I feel like getting to showcase some of this stuff, as you mentioned, would help be able to shine a light on some of this behavior if it is indeed problematic. Or at the very worst is being like, yeah, you know what? Sydney's making a mountain out of a molehill, which I don't think she personally is, considering that some people have corroborated the story. But again, it feels like there's a very little downside to showcasing this. I guess the only thing would be like, would people storm MTV headquarters if he were to get cast again? But again, the history of the challenge is laid with the path of people doing awful things, some of which do make the edit, and then just getting callbacks for next season and assuming that everyone will kind of Men in Black memory wipe and be able to move on from it. But all that is to say as well, my personal philosophy that I ascribe to with the challenge is that, like, I wouldn't say don't find a rooting interest, because I think that's just natural in, reality TV. As Jonathan Penner once said, as storytellers, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, that's how you build good narratives. But also, like, if you look back, especially in a show like this, where people have done umpteenth seasons, the veterans especially have all done at least like one bad thing in their past, either on their original shows, on the challenge proper. And so it is tough to necessarily always stand behind someone as like the most morally, sanctimonious person, can do no wrong, considering that chances are, if you roll back the tape, there's at least something that happened in the past. I mean, look at, again, people feel like, hey, goofball Turbo edit. Well, he did some stuff in even outside of this season, some previous seasons that were not very good. So it all has to be taken with sort of a grain of salt, that I like the role this person is playing in the season, perhaps devoid of who they might be as a person, both in previous seasons and off the show proper.
I think what's great about the challenge is it's not like, we've seen it on other shows, sort of like one-timer shows, where it's like, I hate this person, but I'm going to work with them and pretend I like them into the end. And then I never have to see this person again. With the challenge, the fact that you can hate a person this season, and if you come back, you could have to work with them for 15 years or, a couple of seasons, is like, we get to see, like, okay, well, how do Jordan and Naya move forward? How do, how do these people who've had these big problems move forward together? In some ways, we see amazing relationships, right? The Leroy and Cam situation where they fall apart, they come back, now they're married with 2 kids. Like, that is a pro of the challenge. So I think, like, what's coming up for me is the Anissa and Ashley fight, right? Is like, we're going to see them probably at some point on another season together, unless there's a huge new direction coming for 42 or All Stars is canceled or whatever. But like, we didn't actually see what that fight was about. And even this season, in this episode, they bring it up again, like, oh, it's because Ashley said, like, you'll never have a chance at winning. We understand from the podcast beat, including the official challenge podcast, so like, this is not being like swept under the rug, that actually there were deeper things exchanged. It was about family. It was about low blows on both sides. Like, let's see it, because like, how are we going to really appreciate how they're even at the reunion talking about this when it's been made to seem like it was really like, oh, you could never win the show.
Yeah, exactly. That, like, if this was the straw that broke the camel's back, because again, the context that we're sort of being given, because Anissa starts this episode by being like, again, and she didn't even apologize to me on the way out. Like, are we supposed to take that as being too petty? Or is it that, like, yeah, Ashley said some really shitty things, which allegedly is true, and Anissa was really hurt by the fact that there wasn't an apology. You know, Anissa talks to Nani about, after that fight, after I moved out, none of you would engage with me. Is that because that entire group decided to just divorce themselves to make things easier? Or is it because that Anissa said so many things below the belt that it made them feel like they couldn't interact with her? Again, context is king here, and it kind of feels like the throne is vacant at this point.
Yeah, and as somebody who was like got into a almost podcast threatening fight with Brian about a below the belt comment about someone's deceased or ill father, nobody it could be more on Anissa's side about that kind of comment than me. However, last week Anissa lost me when she was cheering for Ashley in the elimination, and of course she shows up at the top of this episode like, thank God I don't have to deal with her. Like, so happy she's gone. I'm like, what happened to Yay Ash?
Yeah, I wonder how much in succession, like, those two confessionals were filmed, right? Like, the one from last week with her being like, listen, I don't want to see her come back, but I want to get rid of Turbo and City, versus, like, then her immediately jumping to the emotional, you know, sort of the acceptance part of the grieving process of being like, yeah, thank God she's gone. Again, Anissa knows the trades. She wants to step behind the camera, you know, wishes she could produce some of these confessionals, so maybe she's able to just turn around on a dime. But again, just a real difference of two reactions that I think was also probably very prominent behind Nani's confrontation here. Or not even confrontation, but just, like, I think bringing Anissa's gameplay into the light here of, like, we just saw you try to play both sides, right? Like, we know you don't like Ashley. We have firsthand evidence about this. Yet you're the one that's actively cheering for her, not even just standing by and, like, internally rooting for her. You are trying to coach her through this elimination. What does that say about you?
Couldn't be me. Couldn't be me. Could never be me. Yeah. So one thing we were wondering last week if we actually see it play out this week or try to play out. The main alliance is talking about how we can't lose any votes. We can't win. We can't lose. Let's hope that there's a puzzle at the end and you wait to call check until one of the Closet Alliance members wins. What do you think of this strategy in general? I guess in a Survivor season where we probably should have seen a lot more of throwing the challenge. Like, what do you think of this concept on the challenge of like trying to game the finish?
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand why TJ chews them out. It wasn't even a chewing; it was more of a nibbling of, like, you don't want to do this, because it makes for actively less competitive television, right? We've seen this a number of times, especially in recent seasons. Once they have brought in more outright strategists into the show, it's like, hey, let's exploit the system a little bit. And so they don't want to have dailies where everyone is just competing to not be in last. Just, I feel like there were maybe a couple of tweaks you could have made on your end, producers. First one would have been, for this one, have them, like, go around the corner. You know, like, if they're not watching how the other teams are doing, because we've seen this a number of times with, like, All-Stars, right? Where it's like, hey, you know, everyone else is sort of cordoned off in their separate locations, so nobody knows how anyone does. That's really going to disincentivize people, because the stuff they were talking about, right, was like they compared it to the last challenge where, yeah, as you mentioned last week, theoretically, they all should have just, like, hovered above their puzzle, been one piece away, and then, like, on one person's signal, go bang, bang, boom to make sure they don't finish first or last. This challenge didn't allow that because it was individual times. They couldn't necessarily be next to each other, helping one another. The other thing that can make this incredibly simple, and yes, it did lead to a very fun outcome last week where, due to the conventions, you know, the quote unquote underdogs were able to tie things up, but, like, then just say, hey, now we're going to give the winning team a vote back. It can be that simple. You know, maybe they want to say, okay, it's getting down to dangerous numbers of, if we are disallowing two teams from voting and there's only 7 or 6 teams left, ooh, that could mean a lot of vote flips because it just comes down to individual votes. But again, when they sort of knew what the concept was, and especially with the numbers being so tight, your vote matters more than ever. And so that juts up directly against the idea of do your best, because your best is being rewarded by not having an active presence in the strategy when the strategy is inherent to how some of these teams are succeeding. So like, honestly, I want to say that like production's bringing it on themselves. They created the rule. It's all sort of coming back in their faces. Again, I understand why from their perspective, they would be the ones to put the onus onto the teams. And I don't know if this is laying the path for like something in the future. You never know. Like when we had all this Theo stuff with the chain, which we'll get into later on, like I thought it was not only going to be a full DQ, I thought it was going to be like a you're out of the game, because we saw the
Angela.
Cheating, yeah, like yeah, we saw the cheating thing happen last time, but no, it was more so again just these sort of like slaps on the wrist of like, we warned you. So we shall see if truly like the iron fist is going to be brought down, or if this is more so like the gentle parenting of like, okay, but if you don't compete your best one more time, you may not make it to the final.
Well, let's set up the full challenge right after this. Slay. Okay. So it was called Dirty Drifter, and it's the most I've ever paid attention to how a challenge works. I knew I was going to have to explain it. Usually Brian explains it to me, but here we are. So there's a chain-covered van, and one person is going to have to strip these heavy chains from the van, and then the driver will be towed. It's not actually drive, but be towed through a pretty weak obstacle course. And they'll have, it looked like about 6 opportunities to get around these gates, which are just like my old moving boxes that were stacked up. And for every one they successfully navigate, they will shave 30 seconds off of their chain stripping time. And the shortest amount of total time wins. I thought if you go to an obstacle and you drive through it, you should get time at it back. You should be punished for trying and failing. But otherwise, to address what you were saying before the perfect commercial break, I think I wouldn't mind so much. I wouldn't want it to be like when Fessel and Anissa were like given the win and the power couple like had all of the power on whatever season that was. Here, I like that. I would not have minded if the main alliance tried to stack the deck, even if it was a puzzle and it was something easier last week. I still think that's kind of interesting because you could fail so easily. Like here, if maybe they did try, because only Nani and Justin and Will and Olivia were really like up for the challenge. I mean, I guess we see the other members of the main alliance do well, but
if we have to assume the order that we saw in the episode was the order that they went in, it's because Nani and Justin went first, so they tried their hardest. Olivia, Will went second, they tried their hardest. Jake and Anissa, and then once Theo and Adrian DQ, then it's like all of them just need to do the bare minimum. And again, I don't think that comes at the cost of like, oh my god, they need to win. And more so comes at the cost of like, great, Theo and Adrian are in. We don't need to necessarily slow down on anything too. So again, I just feel like this blame is misplaced a little bit, but I think it also makes sense for production to want to CYA above, necessarily putting it on the players entirely.
Yeah, no, and I think this was a great challenge for them to have had queued up for this week, which is probably just like the way it worked out. But I think smart as it comes down to stretch to have things that would be harder to rig, as like you'd be more likely to try to rig it when it's coming down to lower numbers. And to your point about giving the winning team their vote back, that's interesting. I just really think the winning team should be the decider of the tie vote. And so like next week when we're in 2-2 teams,
like, get rid of that coin.
Like 2-2, yeah. So, like, maybe that would, I don't know, half the time, potentially, their vote back. But
I will say this challenge, I don't know if, like, car alarms exist in Chile, because we've had so many challenges this season of, like, all right, you got to get these chains off this car. I don't know what producer's like, I've got an idea. Heavy chain plus heavy car. Great. Let's use it 5 times. We bought the cars. We got to make our money's worth here, because this only happened. I mean, we got the flashback to the last one, right? Which was like 3 episodes ago. Why are there so many chains on these cars, Allie?
You think they're sponsored by Big Chain? Like Big Chain got their hands on?
I think they had chains in their pockets, being like, all right, listen, you can film in our areas, but you gotta feature our chains. These are the heaviest chains in Chile. We gotta show it that even the strongest people are getting gassed on pulling these chains. Olivia pointed out that this is like the rare team challenge that wasn't about teamwork whatsoever. Like, the only teamwork involved was picking who did what. I also found it very interesting that, like, when we see Anissa do the chains, I feel like the way it's edited is to be like, oh, here comes Anissa. A woman can't pull these chains, surely. And then, like, every other team afterwards had the woman doing the chain because I guess the guys thought they were the better drivers. I did like this as sort of a spiritual sequel to the go-kart challenge where we remembered, like, okay, who's not a good driver? And maybe that played out in, all right. I also wonder if they had to pick who was doing what before seeing the other team.
Yes, I had the same thought.
Because I wonder if you see what Anise is able to do and, like, do a pretty good / replacement level job, then you have, like, Aviv and Michaela and Adrian be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this then. But I will say overall, you know, it was a pretty fun spectacle. Again, if we talk about the initial shock of a choice and then have it kind of mitigate later on, like, Olivia flips the van, and the next time I was led to believe, like, oh my God, is she dead? You know, Theo is freaking out that the future mother of his child could perish due to these heavy chains. And then, like, 2 to 3 other people flip the van. It's like, okay, I guess the van was actually more flippable than it was not at this point.
With the chains were necessary weight for the van.
I know, maybe this van is just like the light. It's made out of styrofoam, and, like, you know, aluminum, and so just a spare gust of wind could blow it over at any moment's notice. I also was intrigued by the fact that, I don't know, maybe I'm ascribing a different mentality to this, but, like, this is obviously a reason why your car would fishtail, right? Is doing all this while veering back and forth. I thought the rule was, like, when your car is fishtailing, and maybe this is only specifically on ice, but, like, you're supposed to steer into the curve. And you'd think if there was one person who would know how to do that, it'd be the lady who was raised in Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Does that apply when you're being towed also, when you're not driving?
You know, I didn't get that question on the driver's exam. I haven't taken it in a while. Maybe there should be a challenge driver's exam.
I would not pass that at all. No, but things that should have been edited out this episode and not made a big deal of, like you highlighted, sorry, is a pregnant woman flipping in a vehicle. Like, I know, again, they didn't know she was pregnant. She knows she was pregnant, but, like, it was troubling for me to see a pregnant woman roll in a van. I was very upset by this.
Yeah, it is, yeah, I didn't even think about that. That is pretty wild that, like, in retrospect, I mean, I guess, you know, they have them sign a waiver as long as, you know, the Gutenberg Bible of, like, okay, these are all the things that we are not liable for. But, like, God forbid, if, you know, the child is born and there are any sort of conditions involved, like, do they have any license to sue the child? Not even about this, but just, like, anything in general, right? Like, roll back the tape. Here's an America's Funniest Home Videos-esque montage of all the times I fell off of something or flipped a car over the course of our time together.
I just looked, and I didn't realize the baby hasn't been born yet. The baby's due the first week of December.
Oh my God, we're approaching the month-long, and who knows if it could be an early baby too. So could only be a couple weeks away where there might be multiple paternity duties being celebrated. Brian's got to set up the arranged marriage for his child and Olivia and Theo's baby sooner rather than later, considering how close in age they're going to be.
Okay, it's going to be wild then that, so, like, Olivia was pregnant at the reunion, like, very pregnant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, you think they're going to do, like, the TV classic thing where they'll put, like, a pillow in front of her? They'll just be like, no, she wasn't pregnant. She's fine.
That would be incredible. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of wild that they can, like, and I know that these churn out, but, like, it's amazing to think that you could, like, get pregnant, film a season, and it can fully air before you have the baby. I guess, like, the baby will probably be born before the end of the season, but still pretty close.
Oh, that's actually a good, I mean, I guess it would be. Yeah, you're thinking about, like, how much more is the season left. You could, if you didn't have such stark watermarks as the previous few seasons, that could be, like, a fun low-key bet to make, is, like, what will emerge first? The baby from Olivia's uterus or the finale of the challenge?
Goodbye. So, yeah, Anissa, like you said, the first woman to do the chains. Jake completely biffs it. Like, Anissa got to, again, like, to keep tracking, like, the vets being made to look bad. Anissa gets, like, the dodo music, the dodo edit. She's so bad. How could she think she did, like, your knees, your ankles? How could you do this? Jake is the one who screws up the entire challenge by just driving straight.
This would make so much more sense if he was the first to go. He has seen at least 2 other examples of this happening. Unless he's like, I got it, bruv. I know how to hack this challenge. You just drive straight. The only way to win is not to play.
Like, he's like, I'm going to draw a helpful diagram. Okay. So for anyone who didn't watch the episode, but is watching the YouTube, this was the challenge. And this is Jake. And Jake genuinely, I thought he was going to get out of the car and be like, the thing was stuck. I didn't do the right thing. He comes out, he goes, and obviously this wouldn't be an obstacle unless you had to go around it. He's like, well, if I just drive straight, I've cleared that one. Like,
yeah.
Well, and he's like, no, I went by it. I didn't hit it. It's like, no, you have to go around
I love this.
it.
He's like, no, I was just going down the street. Those are buildings, right? I was just going the scenic route.
He did clear them, I guess, as a technical matter. Like, he drove next to it and it didn't go down.
Yeah, for me, it is really the cocksure confidence that he comes back and everyone's like, what the hell happened? He's like, why? What's wrong? Did you see what I pulled off? Talking about great driving, am I right?
I went straight, and I'm not even driving on the right side of the road I'm used to driving on, and I killed it.
You know what? Actually, you know what? That might have been because you're supposed to go right around the first obstacle. Maybe because Jake is used to driving on the left side of the road, he got so screwed up. You know what? Actually, this is a very American forward challenge because Brits are not used to driving on the right side of stuff.
I thought it was Chilean of the chains. Like, which is it? Is it which?
Oh my god! All right. Well, speaking of the chains, we need to talk about this buffoon. We got to talk about. Can I actually listen? Far be it from me to fact check the man who believes that the N in DNA stands for and. But even when he starts this episode being like, Nani voted for me 7 times in 3 seasons. I know Wikipedia is not like the end all be all here, but I did some fairly deep diving.
Ooh.
I don't believe Nani has voted for Theo until this season.
I thought he was talking about Ashley. Wait, was he talking about Nani?
I thought he was talking about Nani. You know, it might have been Ashley. The more I was thinking about it, but I'm sure he was maybe keeping track Arya Stark style, but still, like, I don't know. Maybe he's good with numbers there and is just not good at following directions otherwise, because we've seen this a number of times. And I'd like to hope, for Adrian's sake, that the page gets turned here after she single-handedly wins that elimination. But, like, God, what an awful look. And this is sort of like, again, the complex edit that I want from some of this stuff, to the point about the turbo edit, is like, Theo, I think, is personified as the underdog of the season, right? Like, outside of Adam and Steve last season, like, one of the biggest underdogs we've experienced on the challenge in a long time. His back is consistently against the wall, but it's, like, entirely at his own hand. Like, this is a huge edit of self-sabotage between everything that happened with, oh, don't worry, Justin and Nani didn't get their key. We can go one more time. It's totally fine. Between even, like, the small thing that we found about him, like, breaking the rules of bringing that was it bomb or card tracker back without Adrian being there. Like, I guess it does seem like, as alluded to this episode, this guy feels like the rules are just sort of like a suggestion, not a given. And, I do think that the attitude fostered by some of these other players partially is like, okay, haha, finally he gets to go back into elimination again. And part of it might be like actual legitimate frustration that this guy apparently has been skirting around so much stuff for so long, and now it's finally come back to bite him.
Yeah, I mean, it's not novel or even necessarily frowned upon in the challenge to try to take whatever shortcuts you can in a challenge. Like, but once, like, I don't even think it was such a bad idea, like, to see, like, oh, Theo can kind of help from the inside. Maybe try. Why not try something? If you can get an edge, if you can put rice in your pockets, like, man, put it in your pockets. Like, but once TJ tells you, we see you and you're not allowed to do that, the consistent need for him to continue to try to, now you're cheating. Like, now you're not trying to take like a little advantage here and there. Now you're cheating in the challenge. And honestly, I was getting frustrated with how many warnings he got. I was like, it should be one and done. He said something and you broke the rules again, you're done. When at the point where TJ says, if you touch it one more time, you will be disqualified, and he continues to do it, you can't help someone like that, like, he literally just can't help himself.
Yeah, I think that, on the one hand, there's always a chance that, hey, a CT called him like ADR TJ, right? Like maybe he wasn't said in the moment. I actually did love because it did seem like an ISO right on TJ giving
Mm.
Theo the fire warning, and I really just wanted to be on fly in the wall after the challenge of this producer being like, "All right, TJ, we're gonna have to like rewind right now. I need this close-in shot on you. Now pretend you're really mad at Theo. Just like give it to him, right? I know he's not here right now, but let's pretend for a second." But like, rare look behind the curtain. We got the producer, I think, like in his earpiece saying, like, Theo, stop doing it. Because I think I agree that like you think once would be enough, but I wonder if it's because there was so much noise going on and so much havoc, like they felt they wanted to give him multiple warnings just in case everything was lost in the din. But there was no excuse. 100% no excuse. I know he said like, "Oh no, the chain is stuck." Like, that's not your problem. And not only that, this is not like Adrian's like, "Hey Theo, could you help me out a little bit? Just like slip a little chain under the dash." She is actively telling you, "Stop touching it. I am taking care of it." Like I'll be completely candid here. Like, I am a father of a 6-year-old with ADHD. Like, this is how I operate with him. And this man is considerably older than my child. Like, it's just like, don't do this. Don't do this. I know you're having a tough time listening right now, but please don't do this. I have to remind you again, please don't do this. And eventually, like, yeah, there's only so much you can do before you just say, "Okay, dude, you're cheating at this point." Like,
Yeah.
there's
You're disqualified, Asher.
there's yeah, exactly. There's not listening, and then there's actively just like shirking the rules. And I agree that in that moment when the ultimatum was giving, it went from less of like a, "Oh, Wes and Bananas looking through the foam in that one challenge in Total
100%.
Madness,"
Yep.
to, "Oh, this is an active rule in the challenge that you are breaking." And it's just like, it's so incredibly frustrating. I'm so happy that Adrian has a moment where she finally gets her pig-headed partner to listen to her later in the episode, because like it just feels like the umpteenth time, and I feel devastated for this poor woman. I mean, I guess Theo sort of foreshadowed it when she picked him in the lock-in, and he's like, "I don't know about that." I don't think he realized that those words would mean the way that they do all these weeks later.
Yeah, and I'm honestly happy for production because on a season, despite it being an amazing season, there have been more like production gaffes where we've been here complaining about something production did,
Yeah.
calls they made. So I guess I think they finally got this one right. Like this
Yeah.
was, and to your point, they did show like very clear evidence. Even Theo saying I'm not helping, it's stuck, is like he can clearly hear someone saying stop helping because he's responding to it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
bummer
also
for
did
Adrian.
some brief fact checking of my fact checking. I believe even if he was referring to Ashley, I believe Ashley voted for him once in their
There you
3
go.
seasons together. They barely spent War of the Worlds 1 together, remember? Because like Ashley was one of the first people eliminated. So not great with numbers, not great with listening to directions. And yeah, I mean, incredibly frustrating. I mean, we'll talk about this at the end. Like, yeah, it's exciting to have Theo and Adrian rack up another win for Theo to continue to be one of the big antagonists to this main alliance. But like, there's at least a little part of my heart that's like, do we have to keep him in if like he's continuing to do these types of things? And if we continue to get this really sad dynamic of like Adrian trying her best to try to get through to this man, and he is just refusing to listen to her to the detriment of this team.
Yeah. I love that you said you're devastated for her because I think that's perfect.
Yeah, like she's trying her best. She really is. And it seems like her instincts are right. Like she feels like she has a handle on things. Like it's just again, it's this typical thing of being like, and it's not even gender to this point, but just like the partner dynamic of one person being like, "Okay, I'm gonna do this." Someone's like, no, don't worry. I've got it. I know the better way to do it. And I love even this being lampshaded a smidge by Olivia during the elimination, where Adrian gets so, again, understandably frustrated that she like walks away at a certain point and says, "Okay, you do you." And Olivia's like, "No, don't let him do him, please." But he does him. It's not great.
To this point, like, and I know it's sort of too soon to tell because like Adrian could go on to win the season, but at this point in episode 15, what do you think like the takeaway or the reception to Adrian is or will be moving forward? Like, do you think Adrian's at the top of the list to come back? Is she getting the credit she deserves, or because she's sort of behind Theo as sort of the person making the bigger sort of like strategic displays, be they good moves or not, is that sort of clouding her, dulling her shine for the future of the challenge, her future of the challenge?
I mean, it's tough because we still only have like a few episodes to go, but at least of the people who have been eliminated so far, and obviously she's not one of them, I would honestly put her near the top of the list of new threats to come back just because of this narrative, right? Like Olivia and Horacio won, or Horacio specifically won 5 eliminations in his season, made the final, and got called back, even if he wasn't necessarily at the forefront of creating quote unquote great TV. There is a very competitive aspect that I think plays into a lot of producers' choices. And yeah, Adrian's been putting together something incredibly impressive, especially given the circumstance that she is now like nearing a challenge record being tied in her first season because she's being sent in time and time again. I mean, even look at something as far back as like War of the Worlds 2, Big T loses her first elimination, but she has such a fight in her that was admired by the people on or in front of and behind the camera that she gets a call back the next season. Like, I think unless Adrian declines, there's a very good chance that she gets called back, because I just think the pure idea, even if she's not directly involved, of like, you went into elimination 4+ times and was able to walk away with 4+ wins, is an incredible accomplishment, especially in your first season of the show.
100%. And while I don't think she's made the best moves, that she's like, when we have seen her like talk to Leo, like when she's tried to sort of leverage that relationship when she's upset that Leo is ultimately going to start voting for her, or which we see her do with, I guess, Aviv and Jeremy last week, whoever she was talking to last week, like she's not nailing it, but I think in a tough position, like she's really trying. She's thinking, like this sounds like condescending. I don't mean to be like Will about it. I just mean like for a rookie, a first-time player to be in her position, to be constantly voted in and mostly following the direction of your partner, she could do nothing. She could just do that. She could do that. I respect that she's trying to make her own relationships and fight from the bottom, even though like Jake, she's drawing dead on trying to use those relationships. I think that to me makes me really excited, not only from her as like a physical threat on the women's side to join sort of this crop of very physical women we've seen on the challenge, but I think she in a different position would be able to play a better social game than she's been able to play this season.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like, I mean, we're not seeing like everyone, swarm around her and be like, oh God, it sucks to be you. But it does feel like, at least looking at the talking heads in response to this challenge, right? It is a lot of like Theo bashing, this sucks for Adrian, etc. And so, again, to a certain aspect, you have to be like, well, you picked Theo. You sort of have to, as Naughty said, you have to lie in the bed that you made. But it does seem like, there are at least people that are more sympathetic to the position that she is in, which could also mean well moving forward. I mean, we see this all the time, right? Even going back to someone like Tori, like if you last a long time in this season and you make good with a couple of veterans, that could be fantastic moving forward. Not to mention the fact that like she could be looked at as someone you don't want to go into elimination with, given like, yes, she hasn't faced off against anyone individually, but she still has won 4 eliminations this season.
100%.
Which is like a pretty astounding stat, especially considering the diversity of eliminations, right? This isn't the old school fresh meat Wes and Casey. Okay, well, they got experience going back and doing the same thing over and over again. Like, they are doing wildly different things each and every time. So, I have so much respect for Adrian, especially given, I think, her very understandable frustration, given the multiple attempts that she has tried to help her team, only to feel like, it is not a team at all. And especially the fact that, even as Theo will acclaim towards the end of the episode, like, she is the reason why they're 4-0 at this point.
And not just the eliminations, like of the Newt women, I think she was the second highest point haver going in from after the individual game. So we see Will and Olivia win, Theo and Adrian disqualified. They're going into an elimination. At this point, I think everybody knew, okay, Jake and Anissa are going to be voted in, though props to the edit for trying to make it look like maybe there was other discussions happening. My question to you, Mike, is if we got possibly a more interesting finish where Theo and Adrian still go in, but one of the main alliance, say Michaela and Cedric, whatever, win, do you still think the eyes would have been on Anissa and Jake, or do you think they would have started to look at Olivia and Will as maybe a bigger final threat?
I mean, it's a great question because of Theo and Adrian already going in. Like, there is, I think, maybe a part of this group that might be like, let's be depraved MFers and put, have the boyfriend and girlfriend go against each other in elimination.
Nani's had to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Nani's like, listen, now the shoe's on the other foot. But I think that, I mean, it really depends on like what Will's connections are to quote unquote the other side. Because, Nani has sort of said in stuff after the season that like her and Will, like basically all the time we see of Nani and Will on camera is the amount of time that Nani and Will have spent actually in the season, right? Like outside of the bedroom activities, they were doing nothing. But again, for all we know, Will was making connections with some of these other people, maybe with Cedric and a Jeremy, to be like, okay, well, now we need to keep them in the game that we feel we want to spare. I mean, but let's also remember the fact that, like, if Olivia and Will don't win this challenge, you mentioned how harmonious Jake and Anissa would be, especially compared as a pair to Olivia and Will. Could they actually be the bigger threats? Yes, Anissa's record in finals speaks for itself, but like, if these two are barely speaking to each other in a challenge, I feel like this will probably be the only challenge for the rest of the season that cannot be operated independently as it was here. And so, yes, Anissa in a final does feel like more of a layup, but could the combination of Olivia and Will and their lack of camaraderie also be a bit of a layup too?
And that is interesting. I think what I would have liked to see is like the conversations we see Anissa have with Aviv and Nani, where like particularly with Anissa coming to Nani and expecting that Nani would not vote for her is like ridiculous. You know, the way the season has played out.
Yeah,
but
which is so weird after that argument that prompted with her moving out, being like, remember that promise that we made all those months ago? We're still living up to that, right?
So it's just like, if there was another option like Olivia and Will, I think it's a lot harder for Nani and particularly Aviv to look at Anissa with a straight face and say, my hands are tied.
Yeah.
So I think that is like whether I don't know that the main alliance is really looking at like who's actually a final threat, though I think they should. I think they might say like, well, how do I continue to take shots at the minority alliance without totally looking like an a-hole? And I think like this, they made it easy by Olivia and Will winning and Theo and Adrian losing, that like Anissa couldn't have realistically expected the vote to go any other way. But if Olivia and Will were an option, then I think it's a tougher sell for Nani and Aviv.
Yeah, so what did you make of sort of this, I would even say confrontation, but just sort of like, I would say the punctuation mark at the end of the Anissa-Nani dynamic? Because again, maybe I missed some stuff. Like, I don't know if these two had made up in some way, shape, or form following their argument, because the way that Anissa was approaching Nani, again, almost seemed to obfuscate the whole thing they had just a few days ago that prompted her moving out and like formally joining the other side in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think Anissa has to try, because why not try? But I'd be very curious to know if Anissa actually felt betrayed by this more than she just generally felt betrayed by the fight that they had and the ways their games were moving in different directions in general. I feel very much about this how I felt about Nani and Aviv getting mad at Theo last week or the week before. Like, we're playing a game here. Like, we're living in a fake society. We have to be able to vote and work and move with our alliances. And again, what's great about the challenge is there are these decades-long friendships that are in the mix. But what's so great about this season is people are not just voting based on their friend lines. They're voting based on the alliances that have existed in the house. So I don't think that, like, to the extent that Nani and Anissa have continued friction, I think it's really out of like the Ashley fight and the aftermath, and it is like this specific vote making the difference.
What if she made more the appeal to Aviv and Jeremy, right? This is what they were attempting to do last week. The classic social strategy trope of, you're on the bottom of the alliance, flip over to our side. Of course, with the caveat of then you'll probably be on the bottom of our alliance. But I mean, as we'll see, whether facetiously or not, Aviv is quite verklempt at the idea of voting for Anissa, if not outright her going in general, which prompts the chagrin of many people around her. So, like, I feel like if there's one person to make more of the emotional plea to, and I guess it makes sense that Anissa, you know, the Vacation Alliance has been promptly smashed to smithereens at this point and stomped on many times over, but like, she was trying to bank more on the years-long friendship than I guess the connection that Aviv feels more lately. But I don't know. It does feel like maybe in retrospect, it would have been, you know, a game of inches considering how little wiggle room that they had in the first place. But Aviv might have been the better person to push to over Nani.
Yeah, and it's hard though because you've got to flip two teams, right? So
Yeah. Oh,
like
that's
they
true.
because it's
Yeah.
4-1. So then it's like, all right, well maybe Aviv would move, especially in the argument of like you guys are going to be next, and then I think she's got to like the only option. I think if you this were a game like Survivor, where I think the votes are a little bit more malleable sometimes than like the challenge is like, well, we've got this alliance and we're going to the end with it. Like Turbo and Sydney and Jeremy and Aviv are openly the teams that are going to start taking hits. Like, I think they
Yeah.
know
I
that.
mean,
They've gotten votes.
Turbo and City
Yeah,
have firsthand evidence.
right.
Last episode, everyone was either cheering against them or actively helping the other team to eliminate them.
And so, like, Anissa and Jake voting for Turbo and Sydney, like, obviously they weren't implementing this plan. But I think what they have to do is try to pull in Turbo and Sydney and Jeremy and Aviv and say, you guys are going to be, once they get rid of us, you guys will be going basically up against themselves. Like the plan has to be for the main alliance that it's going to be Nani and Justin, Cedric and Michaela. Oh no, I guess it could be all four of them, right? Like so that's what they'd be working up against is like, do you really believe that Michaela, who's a brilliant strategist who wants to win, who you don't really know that well, and Nani, who has played this game 1,000 times and never won, will just walk to the end with two teams that can beat them and like join us. You can beat us, work with us who you can beat to turn on them. But it's too late. That's never going to happen.
And that's the thing is that Anissa after this will sort of be like, well, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. But again, I don't necessarily begrudge her, especially you mentioned Michaela, like it's not really shown on the show, but like I think Anissa doesn't she have this throwaway comment of being like, you know, Michaela doesn't like me. She's never talked to me since we had that thing. So like, and Michaela also just seems like the person that is very game forward to be like, listen, I'll, you know, entertain pleasantries with you, but like, I'm not forming this deep down relationship with you. This is technically our first season together. So like, or I guess technically, I guess she was on Spies, Lies, Allies, but again, Michaela was like barely on that season. That it's like, all right, we're not going to try to bank on any sort of like, you know, deep relationship that we had. I mean, I guess speaking of Michaela, do you agree with her perception of Aviv here? And I guess more importantly, are we as in general led to believe in this perception of Aviv? Or do we think that she is legitimately heartbroken over having to lose a fellow OG here?
Yeah, Michaela says Aviv is playing the classic mom therapist manager role. You know that old trope.
Yeah, she calls her what, a fraudulent, lying, unnecessary person in this game.
Yeah. Like we've seen shades of this, right? Because we've seen Aviv say, like, I've kept a good relationship with Theo. Like, I've kept good relationships with the other side so that if they come for us or if the numbers flip, I'll still be good. I think it's fair that her own alliance can see that. Like, we could see you socializing with them. You're voting with us, but you're socializing with them. So, like, what does Michaela say? Like, my eyes do work. Something of an incredible like phrase.
Oh, so good.
It's like, I can see. That said, I don't think it's like that legitimate of a threat to the actual main alliance because whether she's crying to Anissa genuinely because we're friends, but our games have separated us, so I feel bad that I'm not working with you, my friend, but I voted against you with my alliance. Like, whether that's real or not is irrelevant. She's standing up in public voting for you. So it's like that would make more sense as like something to be nervous. I think Nani is nervous about that after the vote. Be nervous about that before the vote. She's drawn her line in the sand. Just because she's crying about it, who really cares what the reason is?
Yeah, I think this more so comes from the fact that they have been in this house for a long time. Like, it's clear that a lot of them are unraveling. This show has an effect on your mental health. You know, Nani talks about it a bit from her own perspective to Jenna earlier in the episode. Like, I think it's more so comes from the idea that, yes, Aviv did vote for Anissa, but like everything behind her tone in the voting speech was to say, like, you know, I'm being held hostage at this point, you know, like this is against my better judgment. My side wanted this. You even see Cedric in the background, like doing the mocking air quotes around sides. Like Aviv is not doing herself any favors. And I agree, like, I don't think this will really come out in the watch. Because again, unlike a show like Survivor or Big Brother, this is not a like, all right, well, you're on the bottom of the alliance, so we'll send you directly into elimination. It's a lot thornier than that, especially with the idea that you can win your way back into the competition. But I think that Aviv is definitely not helping things when she essentially is trying to like essentially put words in their mouths by being like, yep, I don't want to do this because I like this person, but I guess I'm going to have to. Like that only furthers the perception of okay, well, clearly you like these people better than us.
Yeah, but it's like if she did, she'd be like making plans to flip the vote.
Oh,
And
I
I
agree.
think it's
Yeah.
just like in a show like The Challenge, where especially lately, there's been a lot of stigma attached with somebody who like snakes their alliance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
on a show like Survivor Big Brother, you're way less likely to ever play with those people again. So if you tank your representation, if you tank your reputation
Some people
as
might.
someone
Hada would
who's
be a good example of that, taking your representation.
if you tank your reputation, it's not as consequential to future games for the majority of people because they'll never play again, or you're like rewarded by the audience sometimes,
Mm.
whatever. On The Challenge, people are like, you're a snake, I saw what you do to them, like you'll do that to us, like that will be held against you on future seasons. So I just for if I were a member of Aviv's alliance and she was getting up and waxing poetic about how much she loves Anissa and she's so sad and she's crying, I'd probably be annoyed by it. Like, grow up, this is a game. But also, I wouldn't be threatened by it because it's
Yeah.
way worse for Aviv to turn on the main alliance. It's way worse for her game, both from a numbers perspective and her future in the game perspective. So to me, it's like, all right, let her cry about this. She has no incentive to turn on us.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I was also, again, surprised that I wouldn't say this relationship came out of nowhere. I'm sure more eagle-eyed viewers can tune me into like, have we seen Anissa Aviv stuff in the past? But like, it makes sense on the one hand because again, these are two people that are, especially of the remaining people that are left, the most OG of the remaining veterans. But on the other hand, like, of course, we have the Bananas Angels of it all, and like, I don't believe Anissa left 40 on the best terms with Rachel. And so I am a little surprised
Mm.
as well that even in her absence, they're like, you know what? We could work together here.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say it'll be interesting in the future for Anissa because Anissa's like, again, like really been sort of in the Vacation Alliance, but she has these sort of all stars like connections, all stars kind of era people connections. This is sort of like the worst Anissa's social game has played out in terms of like she's found herself not in the like 10-person alliance that just continues to make moves. But I also don't know, again, what 42 will bring in terms of like how many vets there will even be on that season in the traditional sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point that I think she brings up here is like, this has been one of my hardest political seasons ever. And that's because we very rarely have this dynamic specifically where it is like two, I wouldn't say quote unquote equal sides, because again, the past few weeks has been this one side of three teams up against this big majority. But as you mentioned, Anissa has almost always been in the latter. She has been part of this alliance of people that has felt fairly comfortable. And so one of the reasons why her feet have been held more to the fire is because due to the way the dynamics have worked out, she has had to show her cards. In the past, due to the structures or just due to like the way that the cards were falling, she could be friends with a lot of people, get by on her social game, and not need to necessarily worry about getting called out on it in a major way. Here, that's not the case, where it's very much like has been not necessarily set in stone, but very much a hardline stance of, okay, you're either supporting these people or you're supporting us. And so I would say, like, I'm not completely surprised by this being a very difficult season for Anissa, just because can't think of many seasons where she's had to face this dynamic before, where she essentially had to undergo an us versus them mentality, because her gameplay style is largely about all of you.
Yeah, and honestly, it might have been her worst game decision to move out of that room. Like, sucks to have to live with somebody who hurt you and who has sort of the support of the rest of the roommates. But by leaving, it seems like she really gave Nani permission to kind of be like, yeah, you separated yourself from that room, from the game at that point. I don't think it would have changed it. I still think Nani would
No.
have voted for her. But again, I think you don't want to make it easy for your allies to have a reason to vote you out. It's the same criticism I gave to Theo, like, getting angry publicly at Turbo and calling him out. Like, even if you're right, you don't want to give somebody a reason to turn on you ethically. That's that's a
Yeah.
trouble
And again,
position to be in.
the Anissa edit this episode I found incredibly complex, because we go from Dodo edit can't pull off the chains to aha, Anissa, well, you put yourself in this situation, to again, like, her crying tears of happiness to Jake over the fact that like he is acknowledging the fact that she is worthy. And so I think that she is very, very likely to come back, obviously. But I guess like I don't know. I guess the larger question I have is I think that CT is pretty much confirmed that he's going to come back at some point. Bananas is obviously basically done with the idea of ever really taking a season off unless he has to. But the edit has been like, I wouldn't say clowning on these people, but very much downplaying them and playing up others. Now, maybe that was due to circumstances. You know, Bananas' I am the challenge speech was a meal to be made in terms of mockery. CT's lack of athleticism was a running storyline, but like, I don't know, part of me was like, especially watching CT's exit through everything with the Stairmaster, part of me was like, if I was CT, like, would I want to come back to the show, considering like how much they really dunked on one of the most legendary faces of the franchise?
Yeah, I think with CT, it's like he's made it very like his return to the old CT, quote unquote, has been a very public journey now that he's been posting like his workout progress and like, you know, all of these things. So I almost wonder if it's like his view is that it's his fault, you know, like he's like, I was in bad shape, I did underperform, and like if I come back as my old self, I won't get dunked on. I don't know if that's like an excuse for him.
Yeah, it might be this idea of like, listen, we know you'll come back and we know you'll be better. So like, give us this one for a second. Let's make the clown CT edit for once in our lives.
And he might agree with it. You know, like I haven't heard him talk about his edit or anything, but like, so maybe not. But I would say he might agree with it the way he's been publicly kind of posting about his own journey now.
So all this to say, what do you think about the way we're supposed to be meant to feel about Anissa this episode? Because again, we do get this sort of, as we always do, the like, no, but she can do it. And, you know, she's been working hard on herself. But then it also comes on the other side of, all right, Anissa, this is what you get for playing the way that you do. Oh, you're so slow on these chains, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think overall Anissa has gotten an edit consistent with her normal edit, like especially making her look like the victim in the Ashley fight. And I'm not saying she wasn't the victim in the Ashley fight.
But someone literally says in this episode, here comes Anissa playing the victim.
But I think she, like, from the edit perspective of that episode, it's like Ashley was needlessly a jerk to Anissa, and Anissa was upset about it. Like, again, maybe it's just like I sympathize with Anissa in that position, but like I watched that episode being like, wow, people are really being jerks to Anissa. Like Nani is now chewing her out for like, they're supposed to be friends, whatever. I think what helps Anissa is that she has been able to make very legitimate friendships with sort of the new era crop with Olivia. Like I think her relationship with Olivia keeps her more current and relevant than somebody like Aviv, even somebody like Ashley. So I think like this was a very neutrally edited season for Anissa. She took her lumps physically when like, I don't know, maybe she deserved them or not. We didn't see her final time in the chains, but they made it kind of seem like they would have been the bottom if not for Theo and Adrian. But I don't think they made such a mockery of her like CT, or they didn't get the quotes like they got from Leroy, or they don't have Michaela talking about her like they do Aviv. So I think, or Derek really got like put to bed by some of these
by a pillow, ironically.
So I think like with Anissa, like it could have been a lot worse and it wasn't.
Yeah, I think as well, like, obviously, this was coming off of everything with 40, too, where she was talking about her own fitness journey. Like, I think they're also trying to prop up the idea that, like, all right, especially with everything she's been through, look what she's been able to do. And we'll get into the elimination. Like, it doesn't seem like, I don't know, I guess, like, it doesn't seem like Jake and Anissa lost because of anything they did. It's more so that Adrian was better in spite of the circumstances than them. I feel like we didn't get a lot of, like, yes, Jake said that he was physically exhausted, but like this wasn't Theo dragging his lower half on the ground, you know, just barely anything in the tank trying to pull these cables along.
Yeah. Who, like, where do you think the cutoff is in terms of like the new challenge era and the old challenge era? Like, because we talk about Aviv only having done 3 seasons. Like, where do you think? Do you think it's an age line? Do you think it's like a first season line? Whereas we like look to how many like vets they'd bring back. Yeah. Michaela's a vet, Theo's a vet, Olivia's a vet. I don't think we're talking about them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my demarcator honestly might be like the 30s, because again, I feel like the 30s was so different. I mean, you and Brian did that entire exercise, right, where you kind of talk through each one of the teams in the Battle of the Eras and sort of ascribed a label to it. And yeah, as they even talked about on the VO at that time, like that was when the challenge went global. And so I do feel like maybe that is sort of like, I mean, we are talking about season 41 of a show. Of course, Survivor very much made itself over, called itself the new era, to the point where now the previous 40 seasons are kind of being lumped together in its own thing. I don't know if they go that far with the challenge because it has consistently changed its cast more than a show like Survivor. But my cutoff for me would probably be around the entire trilogy of Final Reckoning and Vendettas and Dirty 30 and all that, just because it did mark a shift in casting and the people that they keep bringing back time and time again. I mean, it's weird because Nani was somebody who kind of was a stride in both of those eras, right? And that she had obviously been brought back many seasons prior, but obviously had a deep relationship with Casey, who was brought into that era. But I do feel like there is a bit of a disconnect there. But again, there are exceptions, right? Turbo and Nani, incredibly well connected, technically from different eras of the show. I think maybe on paper you could define it as that, but it all becomes much murkier. Michaela said, I lost the two people that were closest to me in previous eliminations, one of them being Ashley, someone that she had never interacted with prior to this season. So that might be the case going in, but I feel like that all kind of gets erased in lieu of just the label of veteran. Anissa, one of the, quote unquote, oldest in terms of starting season members of this cast in general, let alone the ones that are left, is linked up with Olivia, the vet that debuted the most recent. So it's tough to find that line. All that is to say, I would say on the surface, it might be the 30s, but it doesn't really matter, especially when it comes down to a season that's so based on vets versus new threats. That doesn't end up being the case, but the vets are just going to find their way to each other kind of regardless of whatever season in the show they debuted.
Yeah, Nani is an interesting case in terms of reading what her edit is supposed to be, because this season is really a rebirth for Nani. Not only and she's coming here single, and it's the first time we're talking with Nani about the breakup and seeing her in a post Casey era, but she's having one of the best seasons she's ever had, both in physical performance, social game, I feel like she's getting one of the best edits of the vets, regardless of gender. And it's certainly, she's not a part of the edit, even though she does have that moment with Jenna where she's wow, everyone's really physically fit, like you said, this season. But she does not, to me, get the edit of someone who's about to be put out to pasture by the show.
I agree. It seems like, if anything, they're okay, this is the new Nani, or this was the Nani that we saw back in the 20s, making havoc happen. And so we're happy to have you back again, as long as you're willing to do so. I mean, we got to talk about this, Ali. I never thought we'd get a Jenna Campano cameo, unless we paid for one, in the year 2025. What a wild surprise FaceTime.
You know what was amazing about it is it made me really miss Jenna. She was cracking me up. When she was of course you call me one time. Clearly Jenna was on Nani's list. She's the one time you call me, I'm leaving the gym looking like ass. Obviously she looks incredible. She's pregnant in the cameo. Yeah, this was crazy. Again, it's we got Ryan last week, but we actually got to hear Jenna talk. And
because we haven't seen Jenna since Total Madness or Double Agents, I think, was the last time that we saw her, because obviously she's off starting a family. There's certainly some talk, including from the man himself, about is Zach sort of a taboo term / person mentioned on these seasons now, especially since he has really doubled down on his feelings on production. So I had thought that the entire family was forsworn, but obviously Nani and Jenna have an incredible connection. They have since Battle of the Exes 2, when she first debuted. And it was absence makes the heart grow fonder. Listen, there's a lot to be said about her marriage to Zach and the, views that she supports, I think, by proxy. But I agree. She was making me crack up, right? When she's you're almost there. Oh, wait, actually, you're not. I don't know. Maybe the Jennifer All-Stars push might need to happen sooner rather than later. We got Jay on All-Stars.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, no, I'm not saying I need Jenna back on the show, but I thought this was a funny conversation. I thought it did more. And look, I love Ryan Keough, but there was more coming from Jenna, shown at least, in terms of having alumni conversations. I loved when Jenna was so did you meet anyone? You said you weren't going to. Are you hooking up with anyone? You said you wouldn't.
Yeah, again, I love it. Jenna's a little messier now, and I think a little more like sure in herself, right?
Yeah.
And granted, she still had the capacity to make great TV, producing one of the most iconic fights in challenge history alongside her cousin. But very fun to also see this friendship check-in, because I'm not necessarily on the up and up with what's going on in either one of these people's lives, and you do wonder sometimes, like, okay, are they still friendly with this person? Sometimes you get sort of the exact opposite, like we saw last week, of like, oh, I guess Olivia and Ryan are really close. I don't know how much they interacted in 40 versus like, do you think Jenna still hangs out with Nani? They were really close together and they just haven't been on our screens in a long time. So I absolutely love this. Again, it's weird to say like the nostalgic part of my heart was peaked because again, she was only on like less than 5 years ago at this point, but it does still feel like a long time in challenge terms.
It's been a lifetime. And yeah, Brian's probably pissed he missed Jenna's appearance on the show. Let's
wait until she comes back for All Star 6. You can talk about her every week.
Let's tie up our own loose ends. I think we're at the elimination called loose ends. They had to race. They had two giant spools. Really, like, I didn't appreciate the size until Jake's like climbing up the size of one of them, and I was like, either Jake's 2 feet tall or this is an enormous spool.
I do realize in retrospect how kind of like blue collar coded a lot of these challenges are, of like, move this. Now, granted, this is not like tough as nails directly applicable to skills, but like when you have Jake be like, I'm a builder, I know how to lay out this giant electrical cable. It's like, yeah, I guess some of the stuff that requires, I mean, we had the freaking hammer and nails challenge last season. Like, maybe one of the best things you should do when you go onto the challenge is like, yeah, practice your math, learn how to swim, etc. But like, maybe also work at a construction site for a little bit and just learn these general skills, because chances are you might need to be doing these weird hardware-esque tasks.
Sudoku and sledgehammer work.
Oh my God.
Yes. So they are unwrapping these big spools of cable. There's like 3 cables they have to untangle and then plug into these giant sockets that do nothing. It wasn't my favorite elimination, but we did get to see, as you already talked about, this kind of dynamic with Theo and Adrian come to a head, where Adrian finally is able to be heard and wins the challenge for Adrian and Theo.
Yeah, which was so great. I don't know. I might have fallen for it. I was very much at a certain point, especially when we went to commercial, of like, she might pull a Beast Mode Cowboy and just like sit on the ground for the rest of this challenge. This is something that Maggie Morgan infamously talks about, that if she were ever on The Amazing Race and her partner was being disrespectful to her, she would just sit down on the ground in that moment and be like, I'm not moving. We're not racing until you treat me better. And so I thought for a second Adrian might be so frustrated that this war of attrition would finally be won, that it would culminate in them losing. But, whether it was due to exhaustion, whether it was due to him finally turning a new leaf, at least Theo in this moment, I will give him credit, was like, yeah, you know what? Listen, I did my part. All these cables are thrown down here. Adrian, you take care of it. I feel like we have heard this logic a number of times. The Slumdog Millionaire, like, well, I do really well untangling jewelry, so surely I'll do well here. And it worked out. Like, she is an absolute master at this. And granted, it does seem like, from what was talked about, even when Theo was absolutely gassed, it seemed like things were at least relatively even, if not Theo and Adrian pulling ahead. So all it took was Adrian to kind of just like get their shit together, and they were 4-0. I mentioned this before. I'd be hard pressed to think that like this is now Theo officially taking on a new attitude of, okay, I'm going to rely on my partner more and, feel like she has an equal amount of input, if not more, than I do. But at least in this moment, he learned the lesson enough to make sure they stayed in the competition.
Yeah, and I did love Olivia being like, listen to her on the side.
Maybe that was it. Maybe it was him being like, whoa, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you know what? I guess I should. And yeah, I mean, watching Olivia sort of fret over it all again, I just love that. All right, you do you. No, Olivia, don't let him do him. Have you seen it in the past?
100%. All right, Mike. This has been great. Love getting Mike Bloom takes on the show. Check out the Reality Flash, the classic ridiculous episode of the Reality Flash. Before we get to your other long list of plugs, I would like to ask you, so we do a little new thing on the show.
Yes.
We award the new thread of the week. Can we award a Mike Bloom thread of the newt of the season? Who is your newt of the season so far? With the asterisks. that
It's tough.
there's more to play out.
It's tough because like from a TV, it's almost like the challenge itself. You know, my heart is torn when I talk about the TV aspect of things versus like the actual game and competitive aspect of things. Like if it was the strategic game, I would maybe give it to like a Cedric as an example of someone who like has been very prominent, has been performing well, and has been able to make some moves. If it was from a good TV perspective, maybe I would give it to like a Will. I know Will has been super quiet, but just like all the wild drama he has produced so far, mostly by his own messiness, has been very interesting, especially at the beginning of the season where they're like, who the hell is this guy? But honestly, it might be recency bias, but like I think my Newt's Adrian so far this season, like, which is wild because she was super quiet in the beginning. I think was given that typical edit of like, yeah, she's got a touch of the glam and she has this weight loss journey, but like she is low key one of the best performing newbies of this season and has not been getting as much screen time as her partner, who obviously has taken up space as like I think arguably like the character of the latter part of this season. Like I think when we look back on this, no matter how it runs, it will be regarded as like Theo versus everybody, for better or for worse. But like I can't deny what she's been able to put together, right? Like you said, very high up there in the first half of the game, almost underratedly so. And despite some of the glaring errors that her partner has committed, is knocking at the door right now of tying a challenge record in her first season. I'd be very hard pressed to not give her, one of the outstanding awards here, especially because, again, it's a lot of what have you done for me lately. And I feel like so much of the edit as of late has been focused on these vets over what's going on with the new threats that it's like, okay, who's been popping from the new threats over the past month? It's kind of just been Adrian by default because we keep seeing her in elimination over and over again.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Adrian, the undeniable Blute, the Mike Bloom,
yeah, the Blute.
current Newt of the season. All right, we have 6 teams left going into next week. Mike, who's winning the season? I think something that is for the first time in a long time in the challenge, not obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that, like, yeah, I mean, you have to think about, okay, are the edits of Turbo and Sydney and Jeremy and Naveeb, I would like to believe that at least one of them is not making the final at this point. I'm assuming that we're going in with 4 teams because they like to that. They like to have 8-person finals, be it in pairs, be it individual. And so I imagine we're only getting 2 more eliminations here. I don't know if both of these teams will be gone because, again, especially now down one of Anissa and Jake, like, it'll have to take a lot for both Theo and Adrian and Olivia and Will to make the final. And I just feel like as good as Adrian and Theo have been, every single time you get thrown down there, there's a sizable chance you're going to go home. I do feel like the streak's going to run to the end, or is going to run thin for Theo and Adrian at one point, that I feel like my assumptions are going to stake a claim next week. And if they lose, they're going in and they might lose that time. They might not be able to complete the hand. Or we could see like a surprise Olivia and Will elimination. But in terms of who's winning, like, is it Justin and Nani? Is this how Nani gets her first win on the season? Because yes, I said that Theo is one of the main characters of the back half of this season, but Nani's gotten a lot of stuff about her as well. We see her having a big breakdown next week. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's something like, I don't know. I guess we have to think about the partner stealing mechanic and like maybe she'd be upset that Theo and Adrian staked a claim and they won. But like, could Theo and Nani be partnered together? Does it have to be one rookie?
Well, they can't touch Justin and Nani.
Oh, right. They can't. Yeah, they've
so it would have to happen in like the final if there was like some mechanism.
Maybe she's crying because Turbo made the move that we thought and like either by omission or directly voted them in as a result. But again, given the prominence that she's had, and look, the challenge does not necessarily have as predictable edits as something like Survivor, where it's like you're getting X amount of airtime, so you're going to win. Like, look at Jenny from last season, right? Weird situation, technically a co-winner, but like I feel like did not get a lot of airtime. The challenge is much more about like if you're at the forefront of stuff, you'll get a lot of airtime versus not. But it just does feel like so much is revolving around these two, and they are arguably one of the best duos around right now. I think second place would probably be Cedric and Michaela. I think if both teams make the final, it's going to be a 2-horse race between the two of them.
I'm planting my flag behind Michaela and Cedric as my winner
Mm-hmm.
prediction. But again, I really think it's wide open. Like, I think
Yeah.
any of these teams could win. Justin and Nani, like, if they win, and Nani has had
Yeah.
some of the best partners in challenge history. Like, every season she's with Leroy, Bananas, Turbo. It's like, all right, this is not, how could Nani not win with this partner? And for Justin to be underrated and have that whole issue with Derek where he gets put in, he has a claim staked against him, someone they think he's, they can easily beat. If Justin gets Nani her first win, it will be incredible. This is the best season of the challenge ever in the history of the
Yeah.
world.
All
But
right.
I
So,
don't know that I see it. But that would be incredible.
so the big question I think next week is, and listen, maybe the promo's duping us here. It does seem like, because we get TJ once again talking about the claim being staked. Now, we fell for this a couple weeks ago, right? With the whole Olivia and will a claim be staked? Nothing's happening. Again, I feel like if I'm one of these two teams on the outside, you gotta go for broke. You gotta do this. Who do you think is staking a claim, and who do you think they would go for here? Let's go with Theo and Adrian first. Let's go with sort of maybe the
Yeah.
Occam's razor example. I mean, I guess again the question is, do they
He
have
can,
to do
yeah.
something by default, right? Like, because then Theo would have to stake a claim on Sydney, because I believe Turbo's the only vet male who's left.
Agreed. And this is what I think we didn't realize when Brent and I were first talking about it, that we later realized is like Theo and Adrian only have one team they can stake a claim on, and it's a very scary team to stake a claim on.
Yeah,
Which
though
makes it even more insane that Anissa and Jake didn't stake a claim.
I guess the Turbo and Theo dynamic obviously has been one that has also taken a lot of airtime, be it, them being in each other's arms, crossing the finish line together in War of the Worlds, to being acrimonious here. Turbo does give the silent nod of approval to them finally at the end of this, but like maybe this culminates in Theo versus Turbo in this big race, or maybe if instead Theo feels like it's better to have Adrian back they can have her technically stake the claim, so it's her versus Sydney instead.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like there's no consequence. Like, I just said it's like they're
Yeah.
a scary team to stake a claim against. I guess not really, not this week, especially if like Theo and Adrian are going in regardless, or your girlfriend's going in regardless. That it's like, well, let me stake a claim and try to make a change. You're motivated both for you. If you're Theo, you're motivated for you and for Olivia. And it's not like if you stake a claim against Turbo, you go home versus an elimination against whoever they put in. If
So
you stake a
then,
claim, you're not in any worse position than you were in before.
exactly. Well, then let's go with the other option here. The much more interesting option. If you're Olivia and Will, and you say, A, we've had enough. The only challenge we were successful at is the one where we didn't need to talk to each other. And also, B, let's say that Adrian and Theo are last. They automatically go in. You know that you're getting voted in. Stake a claim. So your choices are who? You could stake a claim on Aviv and Jeremy. You could stake a claim on Michaela and Cedric, or you could
That's
stake a
it.
claim on you can stake a claim on Ani and Justin. So yeah, it's basically either, if I'm Olivia, am I picking Cedric or am I picking Jeremy here?
Yeah, I think Will would stake the claim, and that would be like the culmination of like how much he talks about hating Olivia as a partner.
Mm,
And then I think he would take out Cedric based on size. He would try for Cedric. I think he'd also probably rather have Michaela over Aviv. So
yeah.
I think Cedric is the person you'd rather go against, and Michaela is the partner you'd rather have.
I think it maybe
I think
also
that's probably most likely. Go ahead.
yeah, I think it also might depend on, like, again, we don't know how Will feels about these people. Like, it could also be a thing of like, if he has some sort of bond with Jeremy or with Cedric, like, does that pull him in one direction or the other? I do agree that, like, yes, on paper, Will would probably be the one to stake the claim, but I could also see again a scenario where, like, if it seems fated that these two would go in, Theo and Olivia, the last thing they would want to do is go in against each other. So I think relationships, being the exception, they would both be of the mentality of, all right, well, listen, we got to go for broke here. We need to try to guarantee an outcome where the two of us don't go into elimination against one another. So go ahead, stake that claim.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. I'm excited for next week. I've been excited every week. I'm excited for the next week. It's been a great season.
It really has been. I think that these seasons always run incredibly long. But look, I think given some of the antipathy towards Survivor up until this week, some people might feel this was the preferable program on Wednesday nights as of late. But, even my misgivings that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, I still have really enjoyed this season. It is very tough for a show that runs for 20 plus weeks to keep everyone's attention so wrapped. And there have certainly been lows that the show has hit, but they certainly have not been the lows and the doldrums that we've seen previously. Production, knock on wood, with the exception of like the mini final stuff, has not had any glaring holes in it like it has had in past seasons. And as you mentioned, even had, I think, something that should work to its favor with the way it was admonishing Theo. And yeah, the edit has been really captivating. The narrative of this back and forth between two sides has been captivating. The cast, both old and new, I think has each had their own sort of purpose in the challenge, which is wild to think, and we very rarely get of casts that especially go past like 30 people. It's been a great time to be a challenge fan, which, as you mentioned in the very beginning, makes it all the more morose if this does end up being the beginning of the end or the end of the road in some way. But we're not going to think about that right now. We're focused on the present, and I have been not only loving this season, but loving everything that you and Brian have gotten to bring to our eyes and ears over the past 15 weeks. We're coming up on 4 months of the show at this point.
Yeah, it feels like 3 months. All right, Mike, tell us what you're up to, because you're always doing the most in the best way.
I'm in the usual stuff because I am, to your point, doing the most. It's a consistent most. So covering Survivor, for Parade, for the B&B, covering The Amazing Race as well over on RHAP and with Parade. It's been a very fun, Amazing Race season as well. Again, Wednesday nights, at least 2/3 have been, batting well. And maybe that powers and, quality is shifting between these shows. But fun way to spend Wednesday nights, and hopefully you can spend time with all the great stuff I'm doing moving forward. You mentioned the Reality Flash, where I'm not just talking about ridiculousness, but I'm talking about ridiculous things that are happening in reality TV in general. Follow me at @MikeBloomType. But I think the biggest shout out needs to be given to, of course, Brian Cohen and Emily. Huge congratulations. Like, amazing. I know it has been a long journey for the two of them in particular, and everything looks absolutely beautiful with this family so far. Please go find Brian on social media if you haven't at this point. Drop him a congrats. Everyone looks like they are happy, healthy, and I'm so excited to see what Dad Brian is going to look at moving forward. We have so many of these people, Allie, on the challenge be like, I'm doing it for my kids now. Now Brian knows what that feeling is like.
Yeah, we are excited, obviously, so excited for Brian and Emily and Dylan, new member of the Challenge RHAP family, the RJP family. Oh my God, I'm ill. No, I don't know. I don't know if Brian's paternity leave will continue next week. If Brian will be back, we'll keep you all posted. But Mike, thank you so much, not only for being here, but for managing the StreamYard. Brian's gone. I don't know how to do the podcast.
No, listen,
so
you are the Adrian right now.
Me.
You're helping untangle all the Campbells. You're guiding me right now. I would not be here without you, Allie. And I relish any opportunity we get to talk about this type of stuff, especially with a show that you are just so much of the well-versed expert on. And so I'm thrilled to get the chance to talk with you about this and to listen to all the great things you have to say about this great season moving forward.
Listen to all those great things. Subscribe at robinsonwebsite.com/challenge feed. I think follow Brian at CohenBrian _ follow. I don't know. It's like Challenge RHAP up on TikTok. Don't follow me anywhere, but check out Newsgirl Old Guy. Coming up on the finale of that. Can't believe it. Kiva and I did 10 in a row or 9 in a row, knock on wood. Hopefully we're going to release the finale this week. But who knows? Yeah, thanks for coming by, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was fantastic. Happy belated birthday to Jake as well. I hope his dad still had that Annie wig on when he came home.
Annie wig. I'm screaming. All right. Well, you have to end the pod.
Oh yeah, I guess I do. I will also say, just one brief thing I want to say is that it is weird that, like, if you did see the title of the episode and you didn't know the log line for this, like, they don't bring up that it's Jake's birthday until a good, 25 seconds into his video. So you're like, why is this man dressed like this? What's going on with this dog? You're like, oh, it's his birthday. Okay, this retroactively fills in a lot of much needed information.
I don't know that wearing a wig on someone's birthday explains anything.
Well, we doesn't know the challenge though. When it's somebody's birthday, you dress in male drag and you seduce them. So maybe Jake's dad was trying to do that. He's doing his best, Carl.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
This is my Devin impression.
I have nothing else, Mike. It's been 2 hours.
Oh, okay. I'll end this. Thank you, Allie.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.